horsemen took your land. They drove your people into the hills to scratch a living off rocks. Take back the lands they stole from you. Burn every village.
We have only to remove those who oppose us. It will begin in Rohan.
Hello again, this is Umbra, Lord of the Rees, Master of Autism, and the Scourge of Chicken Tendies. Today's episode is going to be something a little different than usual. I will be attempting to nail down the soup sandwich ideology that people call woke. It's a word we all hear constantly now and polarizing, with many people deciding that it's either good or bad. It's frankly overused and difficult to define, to the point where it has seemingly lost all meaning. However, what they are talking about is a legitimate threat that is more destructive than any ideology we have seen in the 1980s. Now, I'm using the term ideology for simplicity's sake, as you will notice as we move further into the video. I will not be going into deeper detail on the specific politics or political sides of this phenomenon, instead focusing on a more practical explanation and understanding. Quite frankly, most of the quote-unquote woke people are, quote, social justice warriors, end quote, don't even really follow their own stated rules. If anything, the definition seems to fluctuate to be as advantageous as possible when advantageous. The things they claim to value are little more than a facetious mask to hide their true intentions. Much of their founding theories exist in a realm of overly educated gobbledygook that, much like a dodo, cannot exist outside of a carefully controlled environment. This is what makes it difficult to explain how bad and often how dangerous their ideology is. In order to explain exactly what is bad about it requires an equally gobbledygook rebuttal because of the constantly variable definition. So, without further ado, let's try to dissect this Gordian knot. So, what is woke? Wokeness has been described as many things. Some say cultural diversity, others say gender equality, still others say communists and cultural Marxists, and all of these are both right and wrong at the same time. Wokeness is many things because it is not necessarily a specific ideology, but rather a hack that takes advantage of human nature. A cult-like devotion to social orthodoxy is a much more accurate but pretentious way to put it. I would word it as something even more simple: radical conformity. You must cheer on the right things, but not the wrong things. Sexuality is okay, so long as it's the right kind of sexuality. All these rules change and morph based on a set of tenets. The right had their own version of woke during the Satanic Panic in the 80s and 90s, and even extending into the 2000s with the neoconservative moral majority movement. In the end, it's all the same drive. And when I see Matt Walsh and others act in that manner, I'm reminded that just because they may be the enemy of my enemy, they are not necessarily my friends. So, modern wokeness revolves around a set of seemingly progressive and liberal ideas. Concepts of equity in race, gender identity, and sexual preference. However, these ideas are a masquerade and damaging the very people it claims to champion. They call themselves anti-racist, for example. But when you read into it, their idea of anti-racism is not to be against racism. Oh no, they actually oppose opposition to all racism. Rather, there is a racism that is allowed, namely the racism by a group viewed as oppressed on the group viewed as the oppressors, which will change as society changes. To quote Ibram X. Kendi, the author of works such as the classics like How to Be Anti-Racist, Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, and the ever-popular Anti-Racist Baby, he says the only remedy for past discrimination is future discrimination. It perpetuates it under the guise of making things quote-unquote right, but it never truly makes things right, as the discriminators who successfully discriminate against the discriminated then become the new oppressors, and then they will be discriminated against. It perpetuates an absolutely endless cycle. It doesn't seek to solve anything. In the interests of full disclosure, my political views sit in the classical liberal camp. Now, I know when you hear the term liberal, you think a lot of things, but I'm talking OG liberal, like Adam Smith and John Locke. I do have some disagreements with certain aspects, such as the tabula rasa, but that's neither here nor there, and I'm getting into gobbledygook. Fact of the matter is that I'm not really hardcore on the right or the left.
And whose side are you on?
Side. I am on nobody's side, because nobody is on my side, little hawk.
Why is wokeness so dangerous? Wokeness is dangerous because it feeds on several different tendencies. First and foremost, like a parasite, it preys on the ideal of fairness. I think on the surface we all want to get a fair shake at things. Be able to have a chance to put our best forward and try to make it work. Within certain limits, it's an understandable desire. However, true equality would be a nightmare, because everyone's individual abilities and advantages are inherently unfair. To take it to its logical conclusion, fairness as a sole guiding ideal could compel someone to induce brain damage on anyone over a certain IQ, or to intentionally damage the legs of someone who runs really fast. To take it to another example, Freddie Mercury's teeth gave him a unique and wide vocal range. So, of course, somebody seeking true fairness and true equality would take those teeth out, just to be fair. True fairness becomes a tyranny of mediocrity. And I think there is a short story in a series called Harrison Bergeron I would recommend checking out to really see this play out. Even though they're not demanding it yet, this is just one example of an ideal that seems good on its surface, but when unfettered and taken to its logical extreme, it becomes a nightmare that is comparatively worse than malice. Wokeness also feeds on our inherent desire for righteousness. Most people out there want to feel like they're doing something good to make the world a better place. The sense of righteousness can blind one to one's own misdeeds, allowing them to explain away absolute atrocities with a greater good excuse. We saw that quite often in the early 20th century. I don't think I need to remind you where. Lastly, it feeds on a people's desire to have a team that will have their back. As long as they obey the rules and conform, they will have a place to belong. They will be validated. This also comes with the inherent threat. If you step out of line, you will be attacked and destroyed, isolated, with no friends and nobody to back you up or support you. This is where things begin to enter cult-like territory. Once you disagree on a minor thing, then you will be attacked and made to repent. And God help you if you refuse to repent. Why you can't be neutral. The most dangerous thing by far is the very with us or against us mentality. Their idea is that the world is only separated into either the oppressor or the oppressed, and that dichotomy is the only one that can exist. Mutual benefit, symbiosis, those don't exist. This is why you'll be relatively liberal and kind of on the left and still get called right-wing or My favorite, a crypto-fascist. Either you unquestioningly accept their ideology, which changes constantly, or you will one day morph spontaneously into a bad guy from World War II. There is always someone with a less fair situation than the others, so this becomes, as some have called it, a circular firing squad. The today's oppressed will become tomorrow's oppressors. You can't just sit there and wait for it to be your turn. For them, there is no in-between. Therefore, you cannot simply be non-confrontational or uninvolved. You will either be converted to walk lockstep with them until it is your turn to play the oppressor, or you will be destroyed. And it's only a matter of time before they attack something you cannot give in on. For me, personally, it was gaming. But you have to remember, they will stop at nothing and push it to its absolute extreme, because otherwise they believe they will never reach their perfect and fair utopia. It's almost tragic, because they seek what they believe is something good, but the way they go about it means that they will never reach that utopia. In the end, when it comes to wokes, you must confirm or be destroyed. I hope this video has been informative for you. I tried to keep this video specifically narrow in scope. There is way more to talk about with this topic, but I wanted to keep it to something more simple. We all have these words being constantly thrown around with little ideas to what they mean, and I don't know about you, but for me, I barely have enough time to keep up with it all. I can only imagine what people with even more responsibilities or things they have to worry about than me, how confused they are by all of this. If you have any questions, feel free to pop into the comments and ask, or if you disagree, feel free to make your points. I will do my best to address them, and if I'm wrong, I'll put up another video saying I was wrong on something. I'm not afraid to admit that. Please like and subscribe. I'm trying to break through to people to help them understand that this is not a left versus right issue, but a woke versus everyone else situation. I've been seeing people starting to push to the other extreme, thinking that they have to, not realizing that even if we don't agree on certain things, we can still agree that this is wrong. I'd rather not see us constantly swinging between the far left and the far right. I believe we can do better, and I think we can be better. Please like and subscribe if you found this information helpful or useful. I don't believe YouTube is going to like this video at all. So any support you can give me is greatly appreciated. And please remember, passion is nothing to be ashamed of.